The clinic's number was still fresh in my call log when Miranda walked through the door. Her heels clicked against the hardwood floor, her designer bag swinging on her arm, her face lit with the same polished smile she always wore. To anyone else, she looked perfect, poised, composed. But I knew better. "Hey, babe," she said, tossing her keys onto the counter. "How was your day?" I didn't answer. I was too focused on the envelope she'd unknowingly left in her gym bag, the one I had found earlier that morning. It wasn't addressed to her, but the clinic's logo was unmistakable, and curiosity had gotten the better of me. When I opened it, my blood ran cold. "Positive test result for chlamydia trachomatis. Follow-up recommended." Now, as she stood in front of me, oblivious to the storm brewing in my chest, I couldn't keep the words from spilling out. "What's this, Miranda?" She froze mid-step, her smile faltering as her eyes flicked to the envelope in my hand. "Where did you get that?" she asked, her voice sharper than I'd ever heard it. "I found it," I said, holding it up. "Want to explain why you're getting test results from a clinic I've never even heard of?" Her face flushed, and she reached for the envelope, but I pulled it back. "Answer me, Miranda," I said, my voice low but firm. "What's going on?" "It's nothing," she stammered, her confidence slipping. "Just routine testing. You know, the kind they recommend for women." "Routine?" I repeated, laughing bitterly. "Because this doesn't look routine to me." She stepped closer, her hand outstretched. "Matt, please," she said, her tone softer now. "You're making a big deal out of nothing." "Nothing?" I snapped, my anger bubbling to the surface. "You tested positive for an STD, Miranda. And unless there's something you're not telling me, I know damn well it didn't come from me." Her silence was deafening. I stared at her, the weight of her betrayal pressing down on me like a tidal wave. "Who is he?" I demanded, my chest tightening. "And don't lie to me. I already know there's someone." Her lip trembled, and for a moment, she looked like she might deny it. But then her shoulders sagged, and the mask she'd been wearing for months finally cracked. "It's not what you think," she whispered. "No," I said coldly. "It's worse." Miranda's face crumpled as she sank into the chair by the kitchen table, her hands trembling. For a moment, she didn't speak, her gaze fixed on the floor. Then, in a voice barely above a whisper, she said, "It was a mistake." I crossed my arms, leaning against the counter to keep myself steady. "A mistake?" I repeated, my voice laced with disbelief. "That's what you're calling this." She nodded, tears streaming down her face. "I didn't mean for it to happen, Matt. I swear. I wasn't thinking clearly." I slammed the envelope onto the table, the sound making her flinch. "You weren't thinking clearly? Miranda, you cheated on me. You risked my health, our marriage, and for what? Who is he?" She hesitated, her lip trembling, and for a second, I thought she might stay silent. But then she let out a shaky breath and muttered, "It's someone from work." "From work?" I said, the words cutting deeper than I expected. "How long?" "It was just a couple of times," she said quickly, as if that made it better. "I ended it weeks ago." "Ended it?" I asked, my anger boiling over. "So what? You thought you could sweep this under the rug? Pretend it didn't happen?" She looked up at me, her eyes desperate. "I didn't want to hurt you, Matt. I didn't want you to find out. But I did," I said sharply, "because you were careless. And now, you're sitting here expecting me to believe it's over, that you've suddenly realized the error of your ways?" Her tears fell harder, but I didn't care. The woman I thought I knew, the woman I'd built a life with, was a stranger now. "What was it, Miranda?" I asked, my voice breaking. "What did he give you that I couldn't?" Her silence was answer enough. That night, I didn't sleep. Miranda stayed in the guest room, and the house felt colder than ever. I lay awake, staring at the ceiling, my mind racing with questions I didn't want answers to. Every moment of how would you feel if your partner hid their affair for months or even years? Write in the comments. Our marriage replayed in my head, each memory tainted by the knowledge of her betrayal. By morning, my anger had crystallized into something else, resolve. She thought she could control the narrative, make me the fool who quietly forgave her and moved on. But she was about to learn just how wrong she was. If she wanted to keep her secrets buried, she was in for a rude awakening. I wasn't going to let her walk away from this unscathed. The next day, Miranda tried to act as though we could move past it. She hovered around the house, offering forced apologies and empty reassurances. "Matt, we can fix this," she said, her voice trembling. "I'll do whatever it takes. Therapy, counseling, whatever you want." I didn't respond. I barely looked at her. My focus was elsewhere, gathering every piece of evidence I could find. If she thought I was going to let her dictate how this played out, she was delusional. By the time I went through her laptop and phone records, I had everything I needed. Messages with her lover, late-night calls, even photos from their meetups. It wasn't just a few mistakes, it was a full-blown affair. What infuriated me most was the audacity. The casual way she'd gone about it, booking hotel rooms while I was at work, slipping out of the office to meet him for lunch. She hadn't just betrayed me, she'd insulted me, assuming I'd never figure it out. I was done being passive. If she wanted to live in lies, I was going to make sure everyone knew the truth. The opportunity came quicker than I expected. That evening, Miranda was set to attend her office's quarterly networking event. She'd mentioned it in passing, perhaps forgetting I now knew exactly who her colleagues were and who her lover was. When she left the house, dressed in a sharp black dress and heels, I waited 15 minutes before heading out myself. I wasn't going to confront her at the party, not yet. I wanted her to feel the weight of my presence first. When I arrived at the venue, a swanky downtown hotel, I slipped into the back of the ballroom, blending in with the crowd of professionals chatting over cocktails. It didn't take long to spot her. She was standing near the bar, a glass of wine in hand, her laughter ringing out as she spoke with a group of people. He was there too, standing just a little too close, his hand brushing her arm in a way that made my blood boil. I waited until the moment was right. When she stepped away to refill her drink, I approached her, my calm demeanor masking the storm raging inside me. "Having fun?" I asked, my voice startling her. She spun around, her face going pale as she saw me. "Matt," she stammered, "what are you doing here?" "Networking," I said dryly, holding up a glass of water. "Isn't that what this is for?" Her eyes darted around the room, panic flickering across her face. "You shouldn't be here," she said, her voice low. "Why not?" I asked, my tone sharp. "Afraid I'll meet someone interesting? Like your friend over there?" I nodded toward her lover, who was deep in conversation with another colleague, blissfully unaware of my presence. "Matt, please," she whispered, stepping closer. "Don't make a scene." "Oh, don't worry," I said, my voice cold. "I'm not here to make a scene. I'm just here to make sure you know that I know." Her breath caught, and she took a step back, her expression a mix of fear and guilt. "What are you talking about?" "I'm talking about 6 months of lies," I said, leaning in so only she could hear. "About hotel rooms, late-night texts, and a clinic visit you thought I wouldn't find out about." Her face crumpled, and she opened her mouth to respond, but I didn't give her the chance. "Enjoy the party, Miranda," I said, stepping back. "It's probably your last one with him." As I walked away, I felt her gaze burning into my back. She thought she could control the damage, but this was only the beginning. She wasn't just going to regret her affair, she was going to regret underestimating me. The fallout began almost immediately. The morning after the networking event, Miranda's phone started buzzing nonstop. Her co-workers had noticed the tension between us, the whispered argument by the bar, the way her lover, Jason, had frozen like a deer in headlights when I'd walked past him on my way out. But it wasn't just office gossip that set things into motion. I'd saved the messages, photos, and timestamps I found on her devices and sent them anonymously to her company's HR department, attaching a polite note. I thought you'd want to know about an inappropriate relationship between two of your employees. By noon, Miranda was pacing the kitchen, her face pale, her phone clutched tightly in her hand. They've called me in for a meeting, she said, her voice trembling. Someone sent HR something. I stared at her from across the room, my face expressionless. You mean someone exposed the truth? I asked coldly. How inconvenient. Her eyes narrowed, a flicker of anger breaking through her panic. You did this, didn't you? I leaned back in my chair, crossing my arms. You're damn right I did. You wanted to lie, cheat, and risk my health? Now the world knows who you really are. Her face crumpled, and she sank into the nearest chair. Matt, you don't understand, she whispered. This could ruin me. Good, I said, my voice icy. You ruined us. Seems fair. That afternoon, she came home from her meeting looking like a ghost. They suspended me, she said flatly, dropping her bag onto the floor. Pending an investigation. I didn't respond. I was already packing my things. What are you doing? She asked, her voice breaking. Leaving, I said simply. I've spent enough time in this house, in this marriage, pretending things are fine. You made your bed, Miranda. Now you get to lie in it. Her tears started falling again, but I didn't care. I grabbed my suitcase and walked out the door, her pleas echoing behind me. A week later, I filed for divorce. The process was quick. She didn't have the energy to fight it. Between losing her job, dealing with Jason's sudden ghosting, because of course he bailed, and the whispers following her wherever she went, she'd barely had time to pick up the pieces of her life. Meanwhile, I started rebuilding mine. I moved into a new apartment downtown, started working out again, and reconnected with friends I hadn't seen in years. For the first time in a long time, I felt free. Months later, I ran into Miranda at a grocery store. She looked different, tired, worn down, her once polished appearance replaced with something quieter. When she saw me, she hesitated, then approached. Matt, she said softly. Hi. I nodded. Miranda. She fidgeted with the strap of her bag, her eyes darting around the aisle. I wanted to say I'm sorry. For everything. I know I don't deserve your forgiveness, but I needed you to know. I studied her for a moment, searching for any trace of the woman I used to love. But she was gone, replaced by someone I barely recognized. I hope you figure things out, I said finally, my voice calm but firm. But I've moved on. Her face fell, but she nodded. Take care, Matt, she whispered before walking away. That night, I sat on my balcony, watching the city lights flicker in the distance. Miranda's betrayal had been a storm in my life, but it had also cleared the way for something new. She'd wanted excitement, but all she'd found was chaos and regret. And in the end, it had consumed her. I took a deep breath, the cool night air filling my lungs. For the first time in years, I felt completely at peace. This was my life now, unburdened, unbroken, and entirely mine. And I wasn't looking back.